Hello everyone, today's video is going to be focusing on the ecospheres I have created. If you have not watched the other videos in which I explain the experiment's premise and where I set up the jars, I recommend that you watch those videos. It will help you understand this video a bit more. But in today's video, we're going to be focusing on the organisms found in the ecospheres and how they interact with each other. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, because I know I enjoyed creating it. Okay, so the first jar we're going to be focusing on is the lake ecosystem jar. I call it the lake ecosystem jar because I got the soil and the water from the lake. So as you can see, we can see several ostracod species in here of different kinds, kind of interacting here, and also several copepod species. There's some snails here, and of course there's this parasitic worm. I'm assuming it's a parasitic worm over here. It's kind of hard to focus on since he's hiding right on the water surface. But whenever I put my hand near it, it tries to latch onto my hand. And I'm assuming this is because this worm latches onto the surface of a skin and probably tries to have a parasitic relationship where it takes the nutrients from the host. This worm has been trying to latch onto me, and it has been trying to latch onto several snails, but the snails have managed to pluck it off. It's a very scary organism. See, he's even trying to get towards me right now. It can sense me. I'm not sure how it can sense me, but it can. As you can see, the copepods are swimming fast, and the ostracod species are swimming fast. Then we have this mess of algae on the bottom of the jar, and it has been doing extremely well. It's been growing. Oh, over here we have a flatworm that's been eating this algae too. This flatworm is pretty cool. It's a part of the planarian family. And there's several flatworms in this jar. I only saw one at first, but now there's a couple of them. Maybe the first one reproduced because the other ones are very tiny and small. At the bottom, we have a couple tubifex worms, which are kind of cool. They like to dance around, but I don't see any of the tubifex worms right now. So they're probably not coming out, or maybe they're in the tiny cave system behind this algae. But yeah, besides the ostracods, the copepods, and of course the parasitic worm on the top, there's also a water skimmer in this jar. Let's see if I can see the water skimmer at all. I don't think I will find him because he likes to glide across the surface of the water. But yeah, I can't seem to find him. He's probably in the center of this jar, which I can't see. Maybe he's over here. Let's see. Can we find him? Yes, there he is. He's right by the parasitic worm. They kind of chill next to each other. He's climbing the glass as we speak right now. He tries to find a way out. When he can't, he jumps down. I found him feeding on a couple copepods, which is quite interesting. So he does eat copepods, and I think he ate an ostracod. So I think he's the alpha predator in this jar and the king insect, which is very fascinating. That parasitic worm is still looking for a host, so we're going to just move on to the second jar over here. And the second jar over here has a lot of ostracods and copepods too. It also has a couple larvae. I saw a couple mosquito larvae in here, which is quite interesting because I didn't think I picked up any larvae, but you know, that's what happens. So they're going to become mosquitoes soon, but they probably won't thrive since this is an enclosed ecosphere. We have a snail over here. He's on the algae eating it right now. The algae brush is doing pretty good. And as you can see, on the bottom is the sand, because this is the sand ecosystem jar. And there is a shrimp in here. I caught a freshwater shrimp. I don't know what kind of freshwater shrimp because he's from Illinois, but you know, I don't know the Illinois species well. But yeah, he's somewhere in this jar. But besides that, there's a couple snails in this jar, bunch of ostracods and copepods, but besides them, nothing much is in this jar. What's interesting about this jar is the organisms like to stay in this middle level here, while in the lake ecosystem jar, they like to be near the top by that parasitic worm. And I don't actually know why they like to be in the middle of this jar, this middle region. You can see them swim by. It's kind of hard to focus on them because of the glare from the sun, but you can see a bunch of mini organisms swimming by. Those are a bunch of copepods and ostracods right now swimming by. And just so you know, there are 31 species of those, so it's really hard to tell which species are which, but I can tell I have at least 5 or 10 different kinds of species in this jar. No flatworms in this jar. The flatworms are only found in this jar over here, in the lake ecosystem jar, and I think that they came through the soil over here. But over here, since we're using sand, no flatworms. So that's quite interesting. Moving on to the next jar, we have the, I guess you can say the pond rock jar. And I got some pond rocks here, and I put it in this jar, and I got a bunch of algae too. And what I found interesting is not many organisms live near the surface of the water. You can see a bunch of mosquito larvae again, ostracods, copepods. They like to be near the surface over here. There's also a giant snail in this jar. But what I don't understand is many of these copepods and ostracods like to live in the rock layer over here. They hide in between these rocks like there's a giant predator in here that's been feeding on them. But I haven't seen any big predator or insect species that could be feeding on these organisms. I'm assuming that since these rocks are big, the ostracods and copepods are hiding in these rock caves because they fear that a predator might come and feed on them. The other two ecosystems didn't have this kind of behavior. For the first ecosystem, the copepods and ostracods like to hang out near the top. For the second one, they hung out, I guess you can say, in the middle of the jar. But for this jar, they're hanging out all at the bottom. And there's a lot of copepods and ostracods in this jar. It's doing really well, a lot better than the sand ecosystem jar too. And they all like to chill in between these rocks. There's also a giant snail, you saw him in the last video, but he's right now hiding in between the rocks, so I can't seem to find him. And then the final jar over here, the control jar, not many things are moving around. I'm assuming they're not doing as well because this jar is just lake water and, that's about it. There's a couple snails. Snails are doing really well. I think there's about 4 snails in here. A bit of ostracods. I saw maybe 1 or 2 species of copepods, but not many things are in this jar. And I believe that's because there's no substrate here, and that these organisms don't do as great without substrate. So it's going to be interesting to see whether this jar can survive in this harsh ecosystem over here. But the other 3 jars, as you can see, are doing pretty well. For some reason, these jars are doing pretty good. And I believe that's because it's a similar environment to the other jars. So yeah, we'll see how this experiment goes. I'll continue to contemplate on how these jars are going to thrive. And the next video should be in a week from now, where we explore if the populations have increased or whether new organisms have come into these jars. And I'll let you know. But so far, this big jar over here has the most organisms: flatworms, other planarians, parasitic worms, water skimmers, and snail. No, actually 1 or 2 snails in this jar, but this jar over here has 1 or 2. The control jar has 4. So we'll see if more interesting species come and whether these mosquito larvae actually do become mosquitoes. It will be interesting to see. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, I guess you can say, episode of contemplating. And yeah, see you in the next one.